So today's agenda, the aim of today is to learn about BEDS SU, what it is, how it works, and how it relates to you, especially if you are an executive officer. It's also to consider the people you'll be working with if you are successfully elected, and to see your role as an elected representative in the wider context. It's very important that when you're elected to be a president, a co-president, or a co-vice president, you see that you have a responsibility to represent students, but you join a collective team to run and manage the Students' Union. So all about BEDS SU. The key thing to remember through this is that as a co-president or a co-vice president, your role exists to achieve change on behalf of students. Students will have elected you into a position and they will expect that you work on their behalf and you advance positive changes to their lives as students and their well-being. So this video, hopefully some of you might have seen in your induction, but this is our introductory video that we provide to students when they start the university.
Well, you've made it. Welcome to BEDS SU. We have a lot of things planned for you this year. Let's go!
Here I go, ready now. I'm coming for you. Can't nothing stop me. I got some things I gotta do. Hey, 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 hey. I'm making a move. Study long, study wrong. Ain't nothing gonna happen on its own. I'm making a move. Don't need no Hades for the song. I got joy all through my soul. I'm making a move.
So that introductory video, and you'll have seen our current executive team were in that video, as were some of our staff and as were some of our students. The aim of the video is to give you a general overview of what the SU, the Students' Union, does for you and provides for you as a student. There are three key areas that the Students' Union works on for its students. Firstly,
can I say something, please?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, the video you just played, I didn't see any video, like, nothing, I didn't see anything.
So you couldn't see the video? What about you, Nadia?
I can see the video, and I saw some students that I already know, like Alessandro, Mana, and others. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, Principal, what I will do is I'm going to go into the chat and I'm going to put a link to the video so that you can watch in your own time.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
So maybe after the session, you can go and you can watch the video as well. And I'll do the same with all of the videos. I'll put them into the chat so that you can watch them in your own time.
All right.
So I'll just be one moment. I'm just getting this for you. So I've popped that link in the chat so we can see those there. Great. Okay, so as we've seen in that video, it was talking about the ways you might engage in the Students' Union as a student, because we want students to be able to see that. The key three areas that we deliver for students are primarily through representation. The Students' Union aims to be the voice of its members. Now, it achieves that through electing its leaders from among the student body. It does that by having representation at different levels. So for each campus, for each course, there is also representatives elected and in place to support, to collect the views of students and make them known. And we also employ staff to support those students so that the issues that those students raise can then be worked on and can lead to either policies within the Students' Union or potentially even changes within the university or the local community. And that's the key point of the Students' Union, is about collecting concerns, issues, feedback from students, and then trying to do something really positive with it. And that's the core aim of the Students' Union. We often say that if the Students' Union didn't have officers, didn't have a building, and it was just a collection of people, it would still be able to represent students and advocate for changes on their behalf. One of the most visible things we do is our services. So on campus, I know students haven't been on campus so much. At the Luton campus and the Bedford campus, we have a bar, a cafe. We have the Metro at Luton and we have the Hub at Bedford. We have an advisory service for students as well. And these are services that students can engage with for free. They can use spaces, they can seek support and guidance from professional advisors for free, and they operate just for students. As far as we can, we seek to employ students to run these services as well. As executive officers, you play an important part in helping us to manage and run those services, because we rely on the feedback from students, feedback from our representatives, to make sure that those services are delivering in the right way for our students. We know that things change, and we know that services need to evolve to meet the needs of students, and that's why we involve our executive elected officers in running those services as far as we can. And finally, we have member opportunities. This is mostly about bringing students together and providing platforms for students to build experiences either on their own or with other students. One of the biggest ways we do this is through societies. So students can come together on a common interest, on something they're passionate about, meet with other students, and then we'll support them with resources, with space, so that they can come together and undertake their activities. Within the Students' Union, we separate our activities into 4 kind of umbrella areas. So we have 4 key themes. We call them be heard, be involved, be entertained, and be supported. These all align with those 3 activities that I just mentioned. So the be heard strand is all about listening to students and facilitating feedback. That's feedback on your course as well as the wider student experience. We do that through course representatives, through campus forums and representatives, and we do that, of course, through our executive officers. Students will reach out to our executive officers, and our officers will then attend committee meetings in the university and feed into the management of the university too. Be involved is about providing opportunities for students to partake in common interests, sports, or volunteering. Be entertained is about us providing social spaces, safe social spaces for students to come together and engage in, whether they're things we run in our own venues, whether they're daytime or nighttime, whether they're about drinking alcohol or not drinking alcohol. We want to provide opportunities in spaces for students to come together, meet other students, make friends, and make experiences. And finally, be supported. So providing services and pathways for receiving pastoral and academic advice, guidance, and support. We receive hundreds of students each year who come to our impartial service for students. We talk them through a range of concerns. Most of them are around their course and academic queries, but we can support students on any manner of issues, whether it's an issue with their accommodation, an issue with their course mates, or even an issue with a lecturer. These things all get worked through with a professional advisor. So this is an important service we provide for students. Now, as much as we provide all of these things, you're here today because you've expressed interest in being one of our executive officers. Here you can see our executive team. We have Michael, the President, Alessandro, Vice President Education, Hafidja, the Vice President Equality, and Joshua, the Vice President Union Development. A key thing here is that BEDSSU is a democratic organisation. I'm not a student. I haven't been a student for a while. I rely on students being involved in their union and helping to direct where it should be going. Now I bring, like lots of our staff, we bring experience and skills to manage the organisation because we are a large organisation. But its leaders are students, and we look for it to be led by students and directed so that the union remains relevant and it can respond to the most important issues that students have in any given year. You'll hopefully have seen that students are asked to vote on their representatives at a course level. And as you'll be aware, that come March, we'll have an election across all of the campuses across the UK that the Bedfordshire has, where students will elect the new elected team who starts next year. So what do these roles do? I'm sure this will be covered in other sessions, but I just wanted to cover it here so that you can properly see how our executive officers fit into the structure and the general makeup of the Students' Union. Whilst you might have staff who are delivering services or providing services, they might be managing things like myself. I manage people and staff, and I spend a lot of time working with the university. Actually, it's our executive officers who lead on agendas, they consult with students, they promote the concerns that students have, and they try to achieve for them. Key activities about networking and having influence. So that might be within the university, so it might be establishing rapport and relationships with key university figures. And some of it is about getting people on your side with an important issue that you know students are concerned about. It's important to, in those roles, to inspire other students. We want to see that students continue to lead their union. And the key here is to inspire others and agitate for change so that future students can continue to lead their union, and it's constantly achieving for its student body. So whilst we're a democratic organisation, we're still a business. We have, people get paid salaries. We provide these services to students, all of which needs managing, and it needs the operations of the union need to be well put together. You may not be aware, but BEDSSU is a registered charity. It is a charity registered with the Charity Commission, and it operates in that way. So it has a governance structure. It has a board of trustees who meet 4 times a year, and the executive officers join that board when they get elected as well. Those trustees oversee the operations of the Students' Union, ensure that it operates with integrity, that it's accountable to its members and to the public, and also that it operates like any good business should do. It manages its risk, it manages its money safely and fairly and with good controls, and also that it has a long-term plan so that it is working not just from one year to another. I think a challenge for executive officers when they come in to post at BEDSSU is that they come into an organisation that existed before, and when they leave an organisation that will continue after them. And it's really important that our elected leaders see that they are part of that development. It doesn't exist without them. They are really important to the sustainability of the Students' Union. And they have a lot of opportunity because the charity is well run and well governed. It means those students that are coming in leadership roles have opportunity to take forward the concerns of students and make change on their behalf. Now, as a charity and as a business, BEDSSU is responsible to a handful of people by law. So I'm going to explain who those are at the moment. Now, as you can expect, like any business or any charity, we are responsible to the government. So BEDS-SU has certain obligations to the government. It needs to operate lawfully, it needs to account for its finances, and it needs to operate within the rules that the business was formed. Now, if you're elected, when you come in, you'll be inducted into the organization. It's one of the roles of staff in the organization is they exist to support you. And largely they take on the management side of the business so that elected leaders can focus on the representational side of the business. We're also accountable to the university. So under law, the university has an obligation to make sure that we hold fair elections. They have an obligation to ensure that we publish our finances and that we operate with due regard for our kind of charity obligations around money. You know, they'll want to see that we have adequate controls over finances. So the university have that role with us, which is a strange role considering the Students' Union will also at times disagree with the university over some things. But I'm going to talk about the partnership between the university and the Students' Union in a moment. But they are a close partner and ally in the vast majority of cases to the Students' Union, and they provide funding to the Students' Union as well. So the university provides nearly £1 million of funding each year to their Students' Union, and they have expectations over how the Students' Union will be run and governed. And in particular, like I say, they want to make sure that it's fair, it operates with equality and diversity in mind, and that it aims to be representative of all of its members. It's that has created recently the new roles that you've expressed interest in. So you may have noticed that the Vice President Equality and Vice President Union Development, President and Vice President Education, they have changed. And we now have 2 co-presidents and 2 co-vice presidents. Those changes have come about because it's incumbent upon the charity, the Students' Union that we are, to reflect on how representative we are of students and to constantly strive to ensure that we are a fair organisation that is an equal opportunities body for students, so that everyone has a good opportunity to stand for election, and that we can be confident that we do represent the interests of the vast majority of the membership. You might wonder, what about students? You know, the university gives us money and they oversee us by law, as does the Charity Commission for England and Wales. Well, actually, within our legal documents, students are also who we are responsible to. The executive officers are elected by students. If students wanted to, they could deselect and they could throw out the elected executive. Nadia, you mentioned, Alessandro. If students decided that Michael, Alessandro, Joshua, and Hafija weren't up to the job, they could take steps to remove them. That is incredibly rare. It doesn't happen very often. And one of the reasons for that is because students can constantly interact with their officers. And what we find is that students will help guide our executive officers throughout the year. But this is the reason why when we want to make changes to the structure of the executive team, we go to students and we ask students to vote. When we want to elect new leaders, we go to students. When there are new trustees that we invite or appoint to our board, we go to students via the Union Parliament meeting. A Union Parliament is a kind of regular council for students to come together and decide on the policy of the Students' Union, and that ensures that they have oversight of how the union is operating and can hold their leaders to account as well. So I've got a chart here. Don't want to confuse you. You don't have to understand what all of these are, but this is a picture of the staff team. So if you're elected to be an executive officer, you'll come and you'll join a much larger team of people working for students who are at the Students' Union. We employ lots of people at the Students' Union, and we employ them to provide the services and activities that I was talking about earlier. We have three main departments. First of all, on the left side here, you'll see we have the membership services and engagement department. We employ advisors who work in our advice team. We employ staff in our democracy and engagement team, our student voice team, and they work with students to develop ideas into change proposals for things they want to change within the university. We employ somebody to visit campuses and consult with students, get their feedback, and try and develop students' activity outside Luton and Bedford. And we also have someone working one-to-one with our course reps, so that course reps can feel supported. We see that they're elected and things like that. And of course, we have somebody working with societies, so students know how to access what funding is available, that they can support it to organise their events, and also operate in a democratic fashion. Within our marketing and communications department, we have staff who support the quite vast outputs of communications that we have to students, whether it's our weekly newsletters via email, it's the kind of visuals that you might see around campus, or it's on our social media. This team supports students to supports the union to communicate what it's doing to students and to try and engage students in its activity. This department also has our events and marketing coordinator. When we're on campus, we usually run events for students. We have activities. Some of them are nighttime events, some of them are through the week. Sometimes we're running campaigns like the recent exam stress campaign, or we might run particular month or weekly activities such as Black History Month or Disability Awareness Month. So these are activities that will all be supported by staff as well as our executive officers. And as you might expect, we have finance and operations that take place within our finance and HR team. Now, as executive officers, you won't have responsibility for managing these people, but you will have a responsibility for working closely with them. And all of the staff have a responsibility to work with you. And what you will find if you're elected is that all of the staff at the union love working for the union. They really want to work with executive officers, and more than anything, they want to see the Students' Union achieve on behalf of students. And they will really look up to the executive officers to help them in that. And it's a fine balance between how much we seek your leadership, but also support you, because for many people coming into the union, you have 1 year to achieve lots of things, and it can take a while to get going. Well, that's what we're here for, to help you get up and going as fast as you can and to achieve something credible for students as well. Working with others. So I'm going to talk about getting the best out of those you'll be working with. So I just mentioned staff. Staff are employed by the charity. They manage a particular aspect of the union's activities or services, and they aim to support you in your role as an executive officer. But it's not just about supporting you. We also look to you to work with us, and we desperately want to work with you. It's one of the reasons we work for the Students' Union, is because we get to work alongside you in your elected role. You see here the University of Bedfordshire logo and the BEDS SU logos. BEDS SU is a union of students. Unions, the most common unions you might hear of are trade unions, where employees are looking for more rights within their workplace. Well, it's not so different with the Students' Union. The Students' Union exists to advance students' rights within their education. And as most people think of their union, they expect their union to do things for them, to make life easier, to solve problems when they arise, or to address an issue that's emerged. And for some students, that can be small issues that just affect them, but they might affect them a lot. For other students, they might find that their whole course is experiencing something. And what we're trying to do is be in a position to advocate for those changes and to challenge the university when we need to get those changes through. Now, as staff, we will support you in working out the best way possible to proceed with something you want to achieve. You will find that most of the things you want to achieve, the university will be very open to working with. What's sometimes forgotten is that the university does care about its students as much, probably as much as the Students' Union. It wants its students to achieve, to succeed in their courses, and it wants students, when they leave the university, to look back fondly on its time. And so you'll find that the university really values the executive officers. They really value the feedback, and they often want to hear from students. And so it's worth remembering that the university and its staff work hard for students on the whole. That doesn't mean that things don't go wrong, and that doesn't mean that we don't disagree. What's important is that we can both agree and disagree on different things. For that reason, the Students' Union and the university engage in positive partnership, and that'll be a big part of the executive officer's role. The co-presidents, as part of their role, will become governors of the university, so they will have their own legal responsibilities towards the university as well as to the Students' Union. But remember, that won't prevent students being political. If there's a reason for students to cause a fuss, to complain, to stand up for something they feel is not right, well, you'll be supported to do that, and it will be okay to do that as well. The final part of this presentation is to talk about the big idea of students' unions. There are students' unions at every university in the UK. So there are hundreds of them. And there are hundreds of executive officers elected every year to work on behalf of students. And there are thousands of staff who work in students' unions as well. Some unions are really big organisations. Some are much smaller. BEDSSU is around the middle. As part of the of there being lots of students' unions, a big part of our culture is to connect with other unions. We share ideas, we help each other develop, and we can go to each other for help. And it's very common that even as staff, we will reach out to people in similar roles at other students' unions, and we will ask people their views, for their help, and if they can give us a hand with something, if we're trying to solve something. You may have heard of the National Union of Students, and BEDSSU affiliates to the National Union of Students UK, so that's NUS. NUS have been around for quite a long time, almost 100 years, and NUS represent most of the students' unions in the UK. They're a separate body to BEDSSU, so they exist separately, and they operate at a national level. You might often see some of their officers on television, on the news, campaigning or advocating or arguing for the rights of students. Well, BEDSSU we help fund that organisation, and every year we also send our own delegates along to their conference to help to vote on proposals and policies that the National Union can then take forward. So next I'm going to play a little video. It's worth saying that students' unions have been around for a long time. The first students' unions actually started in the century before last. So it was in the 1800s that students' unions began to organise, to become very common. And by the middle of the 20th century, students' unions started paying for elected officers, like the roles you're going for, to work on behalf of students and campaign for their rights within their education. And so if you become an elected officer, you'll join a long history of students who have been elected by their peers who've taken on the responsibilities of advocating for students. You'll see some visuals here. Students' unions have a really credible history of making change. Sometimes those changes come by asking politely, but often they come by standing up, involving lots of other students and making their voices heard. I'm going to play you a short video now, which will give some examples of how people have engaged in NUS, and also some insight into its history.
NUS's student unions campaigned so hard around the anti-apartheid movement, calling for students to remove all their funds out of Barclays Bank, a bank that was very much implicit in the funding of the apartheid.
So throughout history, what we've seen is students are usually at the forefront of social justice movements. And what we see, especially with movements like the anti-apartheid movement in the UK, students globally have this sort of sense of solidarity.
When people go, oh, why'd you campaign? Students don't really cause any change. That's a clear example of actually, we did a lot and we still have more to do.
NUS is doing really important work in supporting the Fossil Free campaign, which is targeting investments in fossil fuel companies by higher education institutions.
The amount of cases of depression and suicide in the LGBT+ community is astronomical, and if anyone says that the gay rights movement is over, then they're not looking at the whole picture.
That kind of pioneering cross-community work really laid the foundations that led to the peace process and an end to the Troubles.
Young people didn't actually have the right to sign tenancy agreements. They weren't applicable for credit ratings, this sorts of thing. And the NUS was really important at bringing these issues to the forefront. And one contemporary example of them still doing that is the idea of bringing the voting age down to 16 rather than 18.
And that's really important because as we get kind of like a younger and older population, young people's voices in politics is getting more and more pushed out of the spectrum.
I have two disabled parents, so I was never going to be able to have financial support from them going through to uni. So the grants that are provided by the government are pretty much the only reason I'm here in London studying.
In the 1970s, NUS staff negotiated with British Rail to organise a student travel discount, which has benefited millions of students. Particularly with spiralling living costs today, it's really important for NUS to continue advocating for students and making sure they get the best deal.
It's important for students to have that route to talk about the issues that they might have with their course, because at the end of the day it's a service that they're paying for, and if it's not up to scratch they should be able to do something about it.
Apprenticeships are a really good foot in the door for some students.
They're in a position where if they don't have anyone there to support them or anyone to say, is this the right thing or is this what I'm meant to be doing, as students have with like unions and with NUS, they're more likely to be exploited.
That, at the end of the day, is why I feel like the NUS are doing a really great thing by kind of bringing all different kinds of students together, because we are all students. I think it's great that NUS are tying everyone together and building this kind of community.
So I hope you enjoyed that video. That's the end of my presentation today. So